The fact that you're watching this video tells me that you have probably in the past faced narcissistic abuse, and chances are you're still facing that abuse. Now, even if it's something that's in your past, you're still rather carrying the scars and the hurt from that experience. And you're wondering, how do we deal with this? How do I deal with this? Let's make it very personal. Well, we got 6 things. Number 1 is divided into 4 sections, so let's get through this because this is foundational. If you miss this first point, you're not going to get the rest of it, or you're not going to get it right. So what are those 4 foundational principles? Well, the first one is challenges. Narcissistic abuse is a challenge. Now, some people would say a challenge, I mean, it's a hardship, it's a difficulty. It's a tribulation. That sounds almost biblical, doesn't it? It's a difficulty. Well, I like to call those things challenges because a challenge is, well, it's something you overcome. That's something to be defeated. So let's call them challenges. So you have these challenges in your life, and we're zeroing in on just one of those. And the one we're taking to task is being abused by a narcissist. Okay, so now we got it. We know what a challenge is, and how do you deal with that? Well, there's a thing that psychologists refer to as impulse control. I like to call it patience. So we're going through the challenge, and we can react to it, or we can patiently endure it, and we can learn from it. Option number 2 is the way to go, if you can at all possibly do that. Now, just very quickly for an explanation of impulse control, I was at the podiatrist last week, the foot doctor. And he was working on my foot, and I made the mistake of watching him, sitting in his chair there, what he was doing, and what do you call it, a flinch? I mean, I jumped, I jumped about a foot, which I think is funny because he's working on my foot. That's a bad joke, but I jumped about a foot. And he said, don't jump. I didn't intend to jump. I mean, it didn't hurt. I just watched him, and I saw him coming after my toe with a drill, and I thought, dentist, it's like the guy's going to rip my toenail out. And I didn't try to jump. I just did. Well, that's very low impulse control. Actually, that's 0 impulse control. So I learned my lesson. Don't watch the dentist work on your foot or the podiatrist work on your teeth, whatever. Just don't watch them do it. Then you will be able to control your impulses. So we go through these challenges with narcissists, and we have a problem with impulse control. We react. Sometimes we fight back, but we do it in the wrong way, and in so doing, we just make things more difficult. So we learn to be patient as we're going through this difficulty, this challenge. And then number 3 is because of that, we actually have the learning experience. There is a process in your brain in which it's not your brain that reforms, but it's your thinking process that reforms. And yeah, in a sense, your brain literally reforms. You have, well, they call it neuroplasticity, changing of the neurons in your brain. And experience is now teaching you about these difficulties that you're having with narcissists and what to do about it. So far we got up to experience. Okay, now we've experienced it. We understand that we're still alive and kicking. The narcissist is not won. He's not done, or she has not done the damage that he or she had hoped. And because of that, now we have confidence that we can endure it. We can face these challenges. We can win over narcissistic abuse. So that is number 1. We can win if we're willing to face the challenge with patience and get the experience, which will result in confidence. Number 2 is this: expose yourself to positive people. Now you may be saying, well, I used to know positive people, but we went through the smear campaign with the narcissist, and there are not that many of them left. Chances are they weren't positive people in the first place, or then again, maybe they are. They just need to come around. Got to give them some time. What did we talk about earlier? Patience, impulse control. But you can find positive people elsewhere. You can go outside your circle of friends. Where do you find them? Well, here we are. You're talking to me. I think I'm a positive person. I'm trying to help you out. So from your perspective, I'm virtual. But I'm still a real live person. I mean, if you pinch me, not on the computer screen, but if you were here with me and pinched me, I'd react kind of like I did with a foot doctor. I'd probably jump, a little lack of impulse control. But yeah, you need to expose yourself to positive people. And can you do that? Well, yeah, you're doing it right now. Number 3 is what I call balance. Now, I've used this analogy in a lot of videos in the past because I think it is very appropriate. Now, when we get out of balance, what I'm thinking about is rumination. So we've been screwed over by the narcissist, and it was painful. And there's no denying that. So we can deny it. We can go into denial. We can say, I'm just going to forgive and forget. People who say that don't really understand the dynamics of forgiveness. Well, I did a video on that sometime back, and you probably want to watch that in the future, but no, don't deny it. That's part of the process. Okay, here's the analogy that I wanted to use, that I've used in the past. Now, imagine that you are baking a cake, and you decide you're going to use a balanced recipe. You remember me talking about this before? So you're going to use a pound of butter. You're going to use a pound of eggs. You're going to use a pound of salt. You're going to use a pound of milk. Use a pound of cocoa. I don't bake cakes, so I don't know. Whatever else goes into a cake, you're going to have balance. It's going to be nice and equal. The same amount of everything. That's not true balance because the ingredients have to be proportional. So you may use 3 eggs. You may use a quart of milk or half gallon of milk. I don't bake cakes. I have no idea what you use. But I do know this. You don't put in a pound of salt. And when we try to balance our thinking using that flawed recipe, we put in a ton of rumination. We let this thing take over our minds. That's all we think about. We need to give it balance. We don't want to delete those memories because that's what we talked about in number 1. We need those experience. We need that experience in our mind so we will have confidence to face them in the future. Don't discard those things. Don't get rid of them. We want to overcome them, not trash them. Keep those things in your mind for future use. Okay, so we're going to have balance, and when we say balance, we mean in proportionate size, not overwhelmed with rumination, not overwhelmed with bitterness and anger, and it's okay to be, you really ought to be a little bit miffed about this because that's a great motivator. Number 4 is realization. So we have balance. We know, what's going to go into our cake, and our cake represents balanced thinking. Well, we need to realize that life is full of challenges. That's just the way it is. There is no person anywhere that does not have challenges. Now, I'm thinking maybe this would be a good metaphor. What if you were to take a sailing vessel, like a schooner or whatever they had in the 19th century, and you're going to set sail for maybe South America or Europe, I don't know where you live, but you're going to take a trip across the ocean, an extended trip, and it's nice and sunny the day you leave port. But is it going to be nice and sunny every day you're at sea? Chances are no. And you know that. That's why you have lifeboats on your ship. Now, let's use another analogy. You're going to take a trip. This time you take your car. Well, you don't have lifeboats, but you do have airbags. Now, you don't plan on having a wreck, right? You have seatbelts. You don't plan on smashing into somebody, but you understand that in reality, those things can and do happen. So you're prepared, and also in the trunk, what do you got? You got a flat, not a flat tire, but you got a spare tire. Well, maybe it is a flat tire, but it shouldn't be. So you've got all these preparations. You've got the airbags. You may have the AAA, so you can call for help if you have a problem. You get your cell phone. So if you need to call the cops, you can do that. You've got all these preparations because you are a realist, not because you are expecting these things to happen for certainty, but you expect them to happen eventually. Stochastic reasoning. So, all right, so now you are prepared because you are a realist. When you deal with people who are narcissistic, that's one of the bumps in the road, one of the bumps in life's road. Now, bump is kind of, it's more than a bump. It's more than a speed bump. When you face a narcissist and their abuse, it's more like a critical crash. But still, you got to be prepared for it. And you realize that, yeah, these things do happen. Number 5 is you work on solutions. And what are the solutions? Well, we already talked about those things. The solutions are you got the spare tire by analogy. The solutions are you got the airbag, you got the seatbelt. You got your cell phone. If you're on the schooner, you got the lifeboats. You got whatever they have. I don't know anything about sailing, but you know I'm sure they got other stuff besides the lifeboats that help them through navigate difficult times. And that's why you've got, because you are a realist. But for some reason, when we face the storm of narcissism and narcissistic abuse, for some reason we're shocked when it happens. I know I was, because several times this person, this narcissist, was my really good friend. Or that's what they had me convinced. I didn't realize that their fake friendship was part of screwing me over. But, you know, I went through those steps that we talked about in number 1, the 4 steps, and I learned from the experience. And that's why you don't discard the memories of those things. You don't forgive and forget. I mean, whatever. You can offer forgiveness if you want, but do not forget, because it's going to happen to you again. You got to keep that in your mind. People take those terms, forgive and forget, and they misapply them. They have no idea what they really mean. So I actually did a video a while back. I can't remember what it was called, but it was something about explaining what forgiveness really is. And it doesn't mean that, never mind, you can, you know, I give up, you can have it. That's not what forgiveness is, but we're not going to take time to talk about that now. So you work on solutions is number 5. And then finally, number 6 is, and if you missed this one, you've missed everything. And this we kind of talked about in number 1. Number 6 is you learn from your experiences. You learn from narcissistic abuse. You learn a lot of things. Number 1, you learn what it's like, and so you are more empathetic and more capable of helping others who are going through it. Because you have learned from the experience, you know how to avoid it and how to manage it with confidence in the future. So you have empathy for others, and you have a mode of operation in the time of emergency. Yeah, I actually think it's an emergency when you're being abused by a narcissist in the future. But what's more, now you've learned even more. You've learned how to recognize these rascals, or you have a better idea of how to recognize them. So you learn from it. So when you're facing narcissistic abuse, you have all these components coming together one after the other, and you can survive. You know that because there are too many other people who are surviving it. And well, because you're one of them, you did survive it. Don't downplay it. Don't even begin to think, it is no big deal. It is a big deal. When one human being abuses another human being like a narcissist, that is something that you need to keep close at heart, because that is a horrific thing. And I cut no slack whatsoever for narcissists. You know, it just comes to mind. Another thing we learn from it is we learn not to be the narcissist ourselves. Do you see those 2 rectangles on the screen? If you'd like our conversation to continue, all you got to do is click on one of those rectangles and we'll keep on talking together. If not, well, thanks for stopping by, and we will see you all next time.